Hi folks, welcome back to the Tabletop's Edge. Today we continue our Days of Decision World in Flames campaign game playthrough. We're picking up with the September-October 1938 turn. Last time out in July-August we saw Germany invade and occupy Denmark in a bloodless conquest. And in China, the Japanese offensive in northern China at least continues to proceed very successfully, although at a really slow pace. So it'll be interesting to see if the Japanese can continue their success and maybe try to build a little momentum over there in China. They do have the Nationalists in a rather bad position. They've taken a lot of losses over the first few turns of the invasion, and right now, really, it's only the Chinese Communists that are holding the Japanese back in the north. Out in Spain, we've seen the Republicans have their first success on the ground. And we also saw the arrival of the first foreign volunteers from the Soviet Union. We'll see if the Soviets continue to support the Republicans in as direct a manner moving forward. Whereas with the Nationalists, they finally cut loose their cavalry corps, which overran the northwestern portion of Spain and is now heading towards southern Spain. So looks like there should be some continuing developments there in the Civil War. Of course, the Italians would love to see the Nationalists triumph as quickly as possible. But right now, I'd say the balance of power is still pretty even in Spain. And if the Italians do want to see a nationalist triumph anytime soon, it may require some direct intervention on their part, similar to what we saw the Soviets do last turn. So, with that said, let's see what develops here as we move into the fall of 1938. Well, we start off as usual with the political phase, and of the major powers, only the United States, France, and Japan are sitting at zero money on hand. The rest of the major powers, as you can see, are in some degree of indebtedness, although not to the extent that they have been over the last few turns. Again, every time a major power, especially early on, attempts to gear up, the gear up costs are pretty substantial, especially with these early bumps in the production multiples, and it usually takes several turns for the major powers to sort of dig out of those holes, especially if they are trying to maintain at least some level of production while also conducting some political options. So this turn, going into September, October, we do have just one country that is bidding for a political option, and that's Germany. And that is because she's required to play a political option. She must choose the declaration of war that she played as a reactionary option during the last turn. So with that, Germany is only bidding one because she really is trying to limit the amount of money she's spending on political options right now. There's several things she's trying to get accomplished. She really does start to, she needs to start building up her on-map forces, particularly if she's going to be taking the next steps in her attempts to expand her territory and grab those victory point objectives that will win the game for the fascists. So she's only bidding one right now for her political option, but with the +4 for her first position, that's going to give her a total of 5, and since she's the only major power actually bidding, that will by default put her into the first position, which means now it's just a matter of finding out whether and how much the order of the rest of the major powers is going to shift around a bit. And it's not surprising that the USSR and France here with the +3 are going to come in tied for second. The Soviets' political effectiveness at 4 here does beat the French 3, so they're going to end up swapping positions, second and third right there. Then we move down to the Commonwealth and Italy, again tied with 2. They are actually both tied with political effectiveness, so this should maintain their order here. And then finally we have Japan and China. Japan will win that tie with political effectiveness, and then the United States coming in dead last. So a rather, let's see, we'll move the last card here, and it will both be stacked here next to Germany. We're just going to have that one political option, and we know it's going to be German option 4. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at that and resolve that. And then that's going to take us right over to the maps into the WIFCE portion of the turn. We'll be putting the reinforcements on, rolling for weather and initiative. All right, we can see here it's German option 4. It's war. As you can see, there's a number of prerequisites, and these differ slightly from major power to major power. Germany's not declaring war on a major power, so we don't have to worry about all of this top stuff up here. The bottom one that we're concerned about is Germany may declare war on a minor country if her production multiple is 3/4 or greater, which it has been since she did her gear up at the beginning of this year. As far as the cost goes, it's going to be war with a minor. It's going to cost an additional 3 money, which will take her down to -6 after we add in the 1 for the bid. So a total of 4 money for the declaration of war here on Denmark. Modifiers for the minor countries, you can see there are quite a number of them, which is probably not surprising given the fact that it's Germany declaring war on someone. But we're going to apply the war chart plus these particular specific modifiers. We are not declaring war on an ally or a guaranteed minor. U.S. entry, as you can see, is going to be a +4, and then we're going to apply the war chart. So I'll go ahead and take care of all of that. We've taken care of the cost. We will then activate a minor over on the map. So once I get the influence placed in the various countries per the instructions here, we'll head over to the maps and we'll see which minor country Germany decides to activate. Well, the minor reaction to the German declaration of war on Denmark was a bit of a mixed bag. Not surprisingly, most of the European countries and Germany's neighbors like Belgium, the Netherlands, Norway took a dim view of it, and now Germany has some negative influence there. Probably the biggest impact of the minor influence was the fact that the Swedes were not particularly pleased with that. Germany ended up losing 2 influence there, leaving her with just 1. So that's going to be a bit of a setback in Germany's efforts to get Sweden actually stacked with her to where she can fully align her when and if she goes to war later on. Perhaps most surprising, though, in the reactions were that of some of the South American countries. Both Argentina and Chile actually picked up 2 positive German influence as a result of that. And because of that, Germany is actually going to choose to activate Chile. So we're going to pull out the Commonwealth, Japanese, and German control markers here. We're going to head over to the status display and resolve these and see where Chile moves as a result of this. All right, here we see Chile located just on the fascist edge of the center of the neutral zone here, and we have our 3 control markers. First up is the Commonwealth +1 influence. That's not going to be enough to move the markers, so that'll just get wasted. Now we have the Japanese have a +3, which is going to move the marker towards the Japanese, 1 hex, and I think we'll move it to either here or here. Let's go ahead, and I think the Japanese are going to pull it towards them this way. And then that leaves the +3 for Germany, which is going to bring it down towards the Germans, and we'll place it here right into the same hex as Finland. So you can see Chile did move quite a ways towards the fascist ideology. She's sitting just outside of it, stacked with, who was it? That was Finland underneath, and next to the Baltic states there. So an interesting development there. I'm sure the United States would not be terribly happy to see a fascist bastion form in South America there in the Western Hemisphere. The Japanese also benefited from that, as I think the Japanese have a perhaps a more realistic chance of taking advantage of any close ties with Chile rather than Germany. So I guess a relatively good development overall for the fascists as a whole. Now, normally we would roll to see if the political phase ends, but we don't have to because Germany is the last major power that actually bid. So the political phase is wrapped up, nice and short this turn. And we're going to move on to initiative, weather, and reinforcements. So I'll go ahead and roll up initiative and the weather, and then we'll head over to the production circle to see what reinforcements are going to be arriving on map this turn. For the initiative rolls, the Democrats actually won the initiative initially by rolling a 7-1 for a 6 compared to the fascist 3 that they rolled with their +2 modifier, giving them only a 5. The fascists felt it important to go first, both for reasons in Spain as well as in China. So they asked for a reroll, and the reroll did pay off for them because they were able to roll a 9 to the Democrats' reroll of a 4, and the Communists ended up coming in with a 10 on that second reroll. So the Communists winning initiative, that they've decided to go dead last. There's nothing that they see that they need to do before either of the other two ideologies this turn to put their +2 at risk. And of course now they are the only ideology with a +2 modifier to initiative, and they'd like to keep it that way if at all possible. So the order for initiative this turn is going to be fascists, then Democrats, and finally communists. The weather roll was a 1, which means we're looking at fine weather everywhere. That's good news for the fascists, both in Spain as well as China. But let's see what everybody's going to be getting in terms of reinforcements this turn. We can see here the French are getting the Strasbourg on map. The United States is adding the USS Wasp. The Japanese are getting the Kaio in the construction pool. The Italians are getting their first aircraft carrier, the Aquila, and the Germans are getting Gneisenau on map. So a number of capital ships showing up on map this turn. The Commonwealth is getting HMS Bonaventure in the construction pool. And we've got a carrier plane for both the Commonwealth and the United States. The U.S. doesn't have any pilots available. This is going to go into the reserve pool for now. The Commonwealth does have a pilot available, and we'll see they're also getting another pilot this turn. So I'll go ahead and record that. That's going to give them 2 pilots as of right now, and I'll have to take a look and see if they're going to end up putting the Nimrod on a carrier. They do have at least one that is in need of a carrier plane, but I'm going to put it in the reserve pool for now, and we'll let you know once I get a chance to look things over whether or not it's going on map or staying in the pool. Commonwealth are also receiving, looks like a Spitfire, a very good Spitfire. That too is going to go in the reserve pool for now. Again, we'll take a look at all of the aircraft the Commonwealth have available, as well as the number of pilots that they have, and determine which aircraft will show up on map. The Japanese are going to get a transport, and they are also going to get the Fukuoka militia. The Chinese are getting the Chongqing militia as well as the 14th Army, a couple of desperately needed reinforcements. The Commonwealth sees a transport go into the construction pool. The Germans are getting a not very good infantry corps. The Soviets have a garrison division coming. The French are going to get a decent for them infantry corps as well as a pilot. And we'll see if they have any aircraft they are going to be placing on map. Germans also and the Japanese are both getting a pilot, so we're seeing the pilot training programs start to crank up here for most of the major powers. That's going to leave the Germans with 3 pilots currently. They do have a couple of aircraft in the reserve pool as of now, but I don't know if they're going to use those or wait for something coming along in another turn or two. Now the Nationalists do finally get, they get 2 aircraft, they also get 1 pilot, so they are going to be able to place one of these pilots or one of these aircraft. Actually, they already have a pilot. If you recall, the Chiri was shot down a couple of turns ago, but the pilots did survive. So with this pilot, that is going to give them a total of 2 pilots, enabling them to bring both aircraft on map, which they will in fact do, and those are the only reinforcements heading into Spain right now. So, looks like there's no change in the state of the ground forces, but big reinforcement here for the Nationalist Air Force, which could have an impact on how things proceed this turn. So that's going to do it for reinforcements. We'll get all of these units placed on map, and then, like I said, we'll review the air units that we want to place for the Germans, Commonwealth, French, and Japanese as well, and then we will dive right in with the Fascists' first impulse. We're starting off in Europe, and that means Spain. Now, Germany does have some minor shifting around of some of her land units, so she'll have some land moves, really nothing worth showing. So we're just going to focus here on Spain. And as we run through the sequence of play, we don't have any naval activity. We do have some ground strike missions, though. Now that the Nationalists have an Air Force back in play, they are going to send their bombers here to ground strike this hex, and they're going to be escorted by the fighters. So now the decision goes over to the Republicans as to whether or not they are going to send their fighters up to intercept. Now the Nationalist bombers do have it's a fair attack factor there of 3, so about a 30% chance of being able to turn face down any of their targets. And given the Republicans' performance last time in the air, they are going to go ahead and send up their fighters once again. So we have our second air battle here in Spain, and let's go ahead and see how that gets resolved here and whether or not the Republicans can continue their hot streak in the air. Both sides have set up their fighter and bomber streams, which there's not much to those given the small number of aircraft involved, but you can see we have a front fighter here on the Republicans with an air-to-air of 3, and the front fighter for the Nationalists has an air-to-air value of 4, and we have the Nationalist bomber stream down here. The air-to-air values means that the Nationalists are going to be rolling on the +1 column while the Republicans are on the -1 column. And since the Republicans are the inactive player right now, they will roll first in round 1. So they're going to be looking for something either very high or very low. And it's actually not a bad roll of, you can see there, a 15. Now a 15 on the -1 column is a defender aborts. Defender aborts front fighter or front bomber. So the Nationalists are going to have to make that decision of whether they turn the bomber away or the fighter. And I think what they're going to do is they'll abort the fighter and hope that in this return shot, their fighters can at least do the same to the Spanish or to the Republican fighters and allow their bombers to get through. So rolling on the +1 column now. And they get not quite as good a roll, but almost. It's a 14 as opposed to a 15. With the 2 column shift, that may be enough to get what they need done, and indeed it is. It is another defender aborts result, which means the Republicans have no choice but to abort their fighter. So after a single round of combat, not nearly as bloody as it was last time, but the Nationalists were able to prevail and get their bombers through, which means we're going to go back over to the map, and now we'll resolve the ground strike after we return both of the fighters to base. We see here the results after the air-to-air combat. The Republicans have opted to return their fighters to base here in Madrid rather than in the hex that they launched from, on the off chance that the Nationalists attack and successfully enter the hex. They don't want the fighters to be overrun and destroyed. The Nationalists, on the other hand, have decided to rebase their fighters much closer to the front lines than Zaragoza, which means now we have the bombers to resolve their ground strikes. We're going to get 1 attack against each of the 2 defenders here, and the red die will be the top unit. That would be the 5-3 Infantry Corps, and the green die will be for the Garrison Corps underneath. As you see, we need a 3 or less to invert one of the units, and the attacks actually ended up being extremely successful. We rolled a 1 and a 2, so 2 hits means both units will be inverted, which is as well what the Nationalists were hoping for, but really didn't have much of a right to expect. So with both of these units now face down, we've completed the ground strike portion of the impulse, and we move on to rail movement and land movement. The Nationalists are going to bring the guard here over into the forest hex here. And let's see, that's going to give them, if they make the attack there, and that's 11, these guys will be halved. That's 15 and a half, be 16 to 8. So that would give them the 2 to 1. Tell you what, we're going to bring this garrison division in as well. And with our final land move, it would appear that the Nationalists have won the race to the resource out here in the southwest. They're going to move into the mountains here for 2, where they will stop due to the zone of control from the Republican unit there. That's going to do it for land movement. There's no air transport, no debark, no invasions or paradrops, and now comes land combat. And I think the Nationalists are not going to pass up this opportunity. They are going to attack this hex here from these 2 hexes, and as we saw just a moment ago, we've got a grand total of 5, 11, 12 in that hex, plus 9, which is halved to 4.5. So 12 plus 4.5 is 16.5, rounds to 17, and the defenders have a defense of 8. They've got 3 for the garrison and 5 for the infantry corps. So 17 to 8 is only a 2 to 1. However, they're going to get plus 2 for the 2 face-down units in the stack, and I think Franco is going to go ahead and provide some offensive HQ support to give them yet another plus 1. So we're looking at a 2 to 1 plus 3, which really is more like almost like a 4 to 1, really. So big attack coming here for the Nationalists. If they can roll a, what are they looking for? If they roll a 5 or better, they'll clear the hex, but they'll be face down and take a loss. What they'd really like to get is a 7 or better. That would keep some of their units face up and allow them to perhaps exploit this successful attack, or hopefully successful attack. All right, so let's see what we have here on the attack resolution for the Nationalists. Oh, and that's not good. Thought it was going to be good there for a second, but looks like they are on a streak here with a rolling low. That is a 2, if you can see that. Fortunately, they had plus 3. Now that is going to give them a 5 on the assault column here. They're going to take 2 losses and only kill 1 Republican in return. So a very disappointing attack for the Nationalists. If we go back to the map here, we'll go ahead and kill the garrison, and we will kill the 4-3 infantry corps. That's going to turn everyone face down as well. And so a big opportunity for the Nationalists comes to naught here. They are going to, the Republicans for their part, they're going to keep that good infantry corps there. They're going to kill that garrison corps. So there was an opportunity here. It appeared with the successful ground strikes to really kind of open up this front here, put the Republicans in a really bad situation, and get adjacent to Madrid. But it was not to be. That's one of the reasons why the Civil War continues to drag on as long as it has. That's going to wrap up the fascist impulse here in Europe. Again, there's some minor land moves that the Germans made. Now we're going to head out to the Pacific and see what Japan has going over there in China. The Japanese are, again, limited to a combined impulse. They are going to pay the oil cost of 7/10 for that. I've deducted that. They have no port attacks or naval air missions, but they do have some naval movement. They get 2 naval moves as part of as a combined, and they are going to move these transports out here to the 3 section of the sea box, and upon reaching there, they are going to embark the Marines here. And for the second move, we're going to bring out, let's see, Kido Butai, or do we want... and bring out the combined fleet. So they'll sail the combined fleet out and place them also in the 3 box here. That will finish up the naval movement. There's no naval combat, no strategic bombardment or ground strike missions. Doesn't look like they have any rail movement as well. So we're moving right along to land movement, and I don't know that they really have anything well, I guess they'll move the cavalry division down there. That's going to pretty much do it for their land movement. No air transport, no debarking of land units at sea, but they do have an invasion. We've got a couple of Marine Corps floating here at sea, and I think we are going to launch an invasion of this hex right here in China. So what that means is we are going to have to calculate the notional factor for that particular hex. And right now it starts off with a base of 1. It's not in a city hex, but it is in a home country of a major power, China in this case. So that's going to add 1 to it to make it a 2. It's not stacked with land units, but it is in the ZOC of some friendly land units here and here. So that's going to add another 1 to make it a 3. There's no shore bombardment modifier since we're in the 0 box. It's fine weather. It is in supply, and it is not surprise. So right now, it is a flip this guy over, and we'll flip this guy over. We've got 10 factors invading in the 2 Marine Corps. It's 10-3, but the Japanese are going to add some shore bombardment from the combined fleet that is at sea, and in fact they've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Oh, stand by. They've got 3, 6, 9, 12 from their 12 from some of their battleships here. You can see down here in the lower right, 3, 6, 9, 12. That's going to be capped at 10 because we only have 10 land factors invading. We'll go ahead and turn these battleships over. I'll place them back over on the combined fleet display for now. That's going to bring it up to 20-3, and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We'll bring in some air support here from these Nels, which would make it 21. 21-3 is a 7-1. It's going to be a +1 because all notional units provide a +1 combat roll. So we're looking at a 7-1 +1. For the Japanese, the good news is that the 7-1 +1, even if they roll a 1, they will suffer no losses, and they will inflict at least 1 loss on the defenders. So the notional unit will be destroyed. So the question is, can they land the Marines and have them stay face up with the invasion, or are they going to be face down? To be face up, to have them both face up, they'll need a 4 or better, but really a 2 or a 3 will allow at least one of them to remain face up. So let's go ahead and see what the attack result looks like here. And the invasion roll is it is a 1. So the Japanese managed to take no losses, inflict 1 loss, and shatter the rest. That's going to be good enough to take the hex. However, both of the Marines are now face down thanks to the really poor die roll. So Fascists not really rolling very well this particular impulse. I don't think they've rolled higher than a 2 on any of the dice they've rolled. Now that, well, except for the air-to-air, they did roll a 5 and a 9. But as far as the ground strikes and both land combat since then, they haven't managed higher than a 2. Still, it's going to get the job done. Not really what the Japanese were hoping for. If they could have gotten both of those corps ashore here face up, then the Chinese situation here further in the south would be a lot worse. Now, nothing else is really going to happen this impulse for the Japanese because they are limited to a single land combat, which we've done here with the invasion. We have no air rebases and no reorganization, which means that's going to wrap up the first fascist impulse, and now we will move on to the Democrats and then the communists. And I think as far as that goes, I think we'll stay right here in the Pacific and do the Chinese before we move over to Europe and deal with the Spanish Republicans. The Chinese, for their part, they're very grateful for that 1 that the Japanese rolled here. They caught a big break there. They could have been in a much worse situation if they had a couple of face-up Japanese Marine Corps here. They are going to have to take a look and see what they want to do down here in the south. They have managed, with the timely arrival of some reinforcements, to put together another line here in the north, and except for the communists here, they're all pretty much either in the mountains or they're behind the Yellow River. The other reinforcement were the Chongqing militia, which unfortunately have to arrive in Chongqing, which is kind of way out in the middle of nowhere. It's going to take a couple of turns, actually, before this militia unit can get anywhere useful. In the meantime, there's no naval activity, no air activity. Don't see any rail moves that the Chinese are going to be doing, which brings us right to land movement. And first thing we're going to do is pull this Shanghai militia back off of the coast here and into the city of Hangzhou. Then we've got to decide what to do with the 6th Army here. Actually, we know the Chongqing guys. Chongqing is not connected by rail anywhere else in China, which is why it's going to take so long to get these guys into action. We know we're going to move them into the mountains here. Want here or here? I guess we'll go here. Now the question is, 6th Army. What did the Chinese do with the 6th Army? Do they send it north? Do they send it east here? They've got 2 units with the defense strength of 5 in Shanghai. It's not like the Chinese are going to be able to, or the Japanese are going to be able to really do anything down here in the south the rest of this turn. They still have everyone face up here. I'm sure there's going to be some attacks in the north. Let's go ahead and slide the 6th Army here. And that's kind of a compromise between sending them to the north and sending them to the east. They're still not much closer to Shanghai here, but if the Japanese do somehow manage to surprise us and punch a hole down here, they're not that far from being able to help assist in rebuilding the line. So with that, they're not going to be doing any air transport, debarking, invasions, paradrops, or any land combat. They have no air to rebase and nothing to reorganize at this time. So a fairly quick impulse for the Chinese, and a situation that's still under control here in the southeast. It depends on how heavily the Japanese decide to commit to this area in the future and how successful any breakout attempts up here in the north may be. So with that, we are going to head over back to Europe now and take a look at Spain. Well, from the Republican standpoint, that was a big victory here, but it was a costly one. We do have half of the Nationalist field forces face down. They've got a couple of small opportunities. They could get a 2-to-1 here, but of course, if you roll a 1, that could be disastrous. They could also get a 1-to-1 plus 2 on this stack, which, hey, if it's successful, it would be fantastic. It would be a huge blow to the Nationalists. But if the Republicans manage to roll a 1 or a 2, it could be a disaster for them. And they've got the Nationalist cavalry out here. They could bring down some reinforcements out here to the west, but they don't really have enough to make more than maybe a 2-to-1 attack on the cav here, and the 2-to-1 attacks just are not going to get it done. That the risk, I think, is outweighs any potential gain they might get from a successful attack. And looking at the production circle, they are going to get substantial reinforcements next turn. They're going to be getting Azania, their headquarters, back. They're also going to be getting an infantry division and I believe an infantry corps as well. So the Republicans, if they can just sort of hold on this turn, it doesn't look like the Nationalists are going to be doing too much of anything else now. So with that in mind, I think the Republicans are going to just simply slide the 5th Corps into the mountains here, to keep an eye on the cavalry down here, and other than that, they're probably content to maintain their positions. What they might do, though, is maybe shift this cavalry here just to increase the strength of the clear hex here, since this Madrid militia is going to be doubled. They've got a pretty good defense there in the mountains. And so it's a matter of the Republicans basically just holding the line and waiting for some reinforcements next turn. Elsewhere for the democracies in the West, I don't really see anything that anyone needs to really be doing. The French really haven't gotten any reinforcements lately. The Commonwealth did decide to go ahead and place the Spitfires on map, so you can see them here in London. And a quick look at the Franco-German border, you can see we're kind of in a rare situation where the Luftwaffe is quantitatively and qualitatively outmatched by a combined Anglo-French air power. They've got just the 2 fighters here with an air-to-air of 3 and a single land bomber with a TAC of 2. The French alone match that, and their Hawks here with the air-to-air of 4 actually give them a slight edge over the Germans. When you throw in the 5 air factor Spitfires there, it's not a situation conducive to Germany really being able to roll over the Western democracies right now. So I think Germany, you'll see them wanting to address this perceived imbalance here over the short term, while also trying to build up their land forces. You can see they've begun a small redeployment of forces here over towards Czechoslovakia in the east. Presumably that will be their next quote-unquote target, but we'll see how long it takes them to get in a position where they're ready to make a move, either militarily or diplomatically, on Czechoslovakia. That's going to bring us around to the communist impulse, and I'm not sure the Soviets have anything they really are going to be doing this particular impulse. So with that in mind, even in China, the Chi-Coms are about as situated as they need to be or want to be. So with that, I think the communists are basically done. That's going to bring us to the next set of impulses where we'll need to roll weather again. The weather roll was another 1, so that's fine weather everywhere once again. We are on impulse number 4, and since the impulse marker is only going up 1 box after each impulse, again, there will be no chance to end the turn after any of the next 3 impulses. With the fascist European impulse here, we're again in Spain, looking at what the Nationalists are trying to do to kind of pick up the pieces after that really disaster of an attack here on the center of the Republican lines. The question, I think they may go ahead and I think they're going to rail this garrison into Zaragoza just to keep the Republicans from getting any ideas of maybe trying to penetrate this gap now in the lines and try to seize the town and destroy those bombers there. As far as land moves go, they do have one land move. This cavalry corps is going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and take control of Sevilla here in the far south. Which, if that holds up through the end of this turn, it'll be another 2-point production swing in favor of the Nationalists. Right now, it's at the beginning of the turn, the Republicans had 8 production, the Nationalists had 7. With the seizure of the resource and the city here, that's going to swing it to be 9 Nationalist and 6 Republican production. But again, we've got at least 2 more impulses, probably closer to 3 or 4 more impulses left in the turn. So plenty of time for the Republicans to perhaps do something about the situation here in the Southwest. Other than that, not a lot going on. The Nationalists are basically just going to have to lick their wounds here the rest of this turn. They are getting some reinforcements next turn. We mentioned the Republican reinforcements coming. Looks like the Nationalists are going to be getting an artillery unit, a division, and an infantry corps. So both sides are going to be sort of recharging, but we'll be getting into the winter weather, so the weather may slow us down. But that is going to do it for the fascists in Europe. Let's head over to the Pacific to see what the Japanese do after their initial landing's last impulse. Back in Asia for the second Japanese impulse. This should be a fairly short, quick impulse. Let's see, I think the Japanese do actually have a transport. Yep, they sure do. You know what? I think the Japanese are going to, they do have one naval move. They're going to bring this transport out to the 0 box here, and he will embark this Osaka militia. That's one of their 2 naval moves, and I think that's going to be the only naval move, since they don't want to spend another 7/10 oil for a full combined naval move. We've got no naval combat. There's no strategic bombardment or ground strikes. No rail movement, which brings us to land movement. And I think with the Japanese, they are going to go here for 1, and they'd like to swap some guys out here, but they don't have enough land moves. They only have 3 land moves. They're 1 short of what they really want to do this impulse. So do we leave those guys there and swap them out? That's we look at that. Yeah, you know, I think we will wait on that. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to use 2 of their land moves here to swap out this militia army for this infantry army here. And I think that's going to do it for their land moves. No air transport, no debark, no invasions or paradrops, which brings us to land combat. They get 1 attack each impulse in their combined, and they're going to attack the communists here, which are north of the Yellow River and sitting on a resource. And they're going to attack them from both of these 2 hexes. Their attack strength is 8 and 4 is 12. We've got 13, 18, and 6 is 24. Defending the hex, we've got 2 units with a total of 7. So it's 24 to 7 right now, which gives the Japanese a 3-1. They are going to, once again, they're going to have Uematsu lend some offensive HQ support. Mao is not quite close enough to provide any defensive support. So with Uematsu's offensive support, it's going to end up being a 3-to-1+1. And the communists, they're looking at whether they want the blitzkrieg table or the assault table, but I think they're going to go with the assault table. Again, the assault table gives the attackers a much lower chance of keeping anybody face up, and right now the Chinese are just hoping to slow down the Japanese progress. They don't necessarily, while they would like to preserve their own forces, they think it's more critical to keep the Japanese, get them turned face down, because that's really what's limiting the Japanese more than anything else. So with a 3-to-1+1 on the assault table, let's see what the attack looks like here. And the roll is a not very good one, but it is better than it has been, slightly. A 3 brings us to a 4, and that is actually 2 Japanese losses, 2 attacker losses to 1 defender loss. So another really bad result for the Japanese here in China this turn. Now, fortunately for the Japanese, they actually, what did I say, 3? I take that back. That is, yes, 3 becomes a 4. That 4 is a 2 attacker, 1 defender loss. They are going to destroy the militia there, and they will go ahead and destroy the other militia they brought up. And now the Communists have a decision to make. The infantry corps is more expensive. It's also stronger than the cavalry corps, but the cavalry corps takes longer to rebuild. Despite that, I think they will go ahead and kill the cavalry corps. Now, since the defender did not lose more units than the attacker ended up losing more units than the defender is not going to be turned face down. However, the attackers are all going to be turned face down. And that is going to put an end to, I think, most of what the Japanese are intending to do here in China this turn. So they managed to open up another bridgehead or beachhead down here in the south, but their attacks in the north not going very well. And we'll see. They've still got a few impulses, most likely, to try to do something, but the headquarters is face down, and with the other face down units here, it's going to be difficult to mount any sort of decent attack on the remaining Chinese unit here, or even across the river here, since they'll be attacking from a single hex and halved at that. So looks like the Japanese in the north have been slowed down and stopped for the time being. So a good turn for the Chinese, not so good for the Japanese. That is it for the second fascist impulse, and we will go ahead and pick up with the Democrats next, and we'll probably stay here in Asia since we're already here. Well, the only thing the Chinese really have to do, thanks to the failed Japanese attack, is just slide this 6th Army. I think they are going to go ahead and slide them up here to strengthen the defenses in the north. Yeah, I think that's about it. The only other guy they really need to reposition would be the militia here, but they're face down till next turn. So very quick impulse for the Chinese, and now we are headed back to Spain, where again, I don't think we're going to see much going on at all. In fact, we head back this way. I think what I may do is just kind of run through the next few impulses, where really not much is going to be happening. There's no real change in the situation here in Spain. The Republicans have already kind of decided to just hunker down and await their reinforcements next turn. So rather than just kind of bouncing back and forth to see a whole lot of nothing, I think I will go ahead and just run through the rest of the turn. Again, if something interesting does pop up, I'll break in and we'll pick up from there. So otherwise, when we get to the end of the turn, I'll just give you just a quick recap over what, if anything, may have transpired from here on out. Well, the turn actually did not last much longer. There was another set of impulses, and then on that fourth set, yeah, I think it's the fourth set, the Democrats actually managed to end the turn with a roll of 1, which has some impact on the initiative die roll modifier for next turn, because the Communists, being the ideology that received fewer impulses than both of the other impulses, or both of the other ideologies, were to move 1 box towards the +2 DRM. However, they were already in the +2 box, which means the other 2 ideologies move 1 box to the left towards the -1. Well, the Democrats are already sitting in the -1, so they have nowhere to go, but the Fascists, who were in the +1 box, have now slid down to the 0 box and are unable to ask for a reroll. So a short surprise ending to the turn there ended up hurting the fascist initiative chances here going forward. Also, the weather roll ended up being a 10, which was just abysmal weather. There were storms in the Arctic, North Temperate, and North Monsoon, with rain in Mediterranean and the South Monsoon. The only place there was fine weather was in South Temperate. And more importantly, for next turn, for November, December, there's going to be a +2 to the weather roll in the next impulse to start off November, December, which means we are looking at a really good chance of some bad weather and a short November, December turn as a result. So while the situation here in Spain really did not change much at all, I think the Republicans just shifted this core here further south in the mountains. They were going to make a drive on Sevilla, but the bad weather would have meant they were going to be faced down there, and did not risk that. So as a result, the production totals here are going to be 9 build points for the Nationalists and 6 for the Republicans, although that should not be an issue, as I think that will allow both sides to completely rebuild whatever they have in the force pools. Although I will note that having recaptured Sevilla, that is going to add the Sevilla militia to the force pools for the Nationalists. So they are going to potentially receive an additional unit, making their field force that much stronger. Nothing else really changed here in Europe. Over here in China, the Japanese did manage to move up some reinforcements to replace those militia losses in the north here, and you can see they also were able to move up and kind of unify the bridgehead here, and they landed some reinforcements at Fuchao. Now, obviously, I have already done the return to base and the final reorganization phase, so you can see everything is now face up again, and we are ready for production. Now, you haven't heard me talk about partisans at all in this game, and that's because the rolls have really had zero impact on anything so far. Even in China, now that we're actually at war in China, there's no hex eligible for a partisan unit to be placed, even if I did roll China as a result. You can see that the Japanese are literally occupying every single hex they control, and we're going to need, in order to place a partisan, it has to be in a hex that is free of enemy units or enemy zones of control. So if and when a partisan result has some sort of impact on the game and we end up placing a partisan unit, obviously I'll show you that. But in case any of you were wondering, hey, what's going on with the partisans, that's really the story there. Just no story. They really haven't had any effect on the game as of yet, which means with final reorganization complete, I believe we are now, yes, ready to move on to production. Well, we've wrapped up the production for all the major powers. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what they built, starting with the Fascists. Italy is beginning the second cycle of Vittorio Veneto, pulling her out of the construction pool, and they are also beginning construction, first cycle, of some submarines. So maintaining their focus on the Regia Marina is Italy. Moving on to the Germans are going to begin construction of a single-engine fighter. They are also building an HQ armor, 2, 3, 4. That'll show up next summer of 39. And that's going to be a grand total of 10 that Germany is spending. And then finally, the Japanese are beginning the second cycle on Hiryu, bringing her out of the construction pool. They are building a militia unit. They are training a pilot. And they are building 2 carrier planes. And that's going to be a total of 7 for the Japanese. The Soviets are building another mechanized corps, and they are also training some pilots. Moving on to the democracies. France is also building a headquarters, but it is an infantry headquarters, and they are building a carrier plane. That's going to cost them a grand total of 5 build points. The Commonwealth has another big turn. They are building they're training pilots. They are building a tanker point. They are beginning first cycle of a battleship, and they are also beginning the second cycle of HMS Indomitable, so another carrier getting ready to join the fleet next year. And with their focus on the Navy and carriers, they are also building 2 carrier planes. The Chinese are going to be building Chang's headquarters again, so an infantry headquarters for the Chinese for a grand total of 5 build points. And if I didn't say so, the Commonwealth total was 8 build points for all of those ships and aircraft. And then rounding out the major powers, the United States is pulling out of the construction pool USS Colorado, so another battleship is underway there. You can see the production circles pretty much filled with American battleships coming out slowly but steadily. And that's a grand total of 3 build points for the Americans. Now, for the Spanish, the Republicans have only a garrison corps in their force pool, so they're building that for a total of 2. The Nationalists had a little bit more than that. They have a militia unit which they're building, as well as a garrison division and an infantry corps, and that was a grand total of 6 build points for the Nationalists. So, as we can see, things continue. The production continues steadily here. We've got a Japanese invasion of China, which is, up until that last attack, has been very successful for them, but just been moving at a snail's pace. And with bad weather looking to close in here next turn, I expect there to be not much progress made over there in China, certainly till the spring of 1939. And the Spanish Civil War has seen some back and forth there as well. Looks like both sides are going to get a fair number of reinforcements here in November, December. So if we get some good weather, we may see a continuation of the action we've seen down in Spain. Or if the weather turns bad, chances are things will just kind of shut down there for another couple turns. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Thanks again for watching. Join us next time as we finish out 1938, and we'll probably be able to move into 1939. The November, December, January, February turns tend to be fairly short because of the bad weather. So if that's the case, we'll go ahead and double up and we'll get 2 turns out of the way next time. So till then, take care, and we'll see you next time.